The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. More than likely most, if not all, clicking on this video know of Sisyphus, but for those unaware, Sisyphus is a Greek myth of a man punished by gods to continuously roll a rock up a hill, only for it to roll back down and start the whole process over. Now for all my Percy Jackson fans, you probably had a similar shock as to the insane stuff the gods were actually getting up to. Like for instance, Poseidon cursing Pasiphae to lust over a bull, which created the Minotaur. Gross. Or Apollo granted Cassandra the gift of prophecy only to have the caveat that no one would ever believe you. Apollo, you gaslighting whore! But upon researching a lot of these, they do bear a lot of similarities to the story of Sisyphus. Whether it be Ixion and his eternal punishment of being burned on a wheel, Prometheus and his eternal punishment of having his liver eaten and it regenerating only for it to happen again the next day, or Tantalus and his eternal punishment of being put in a lake with fruit that hung over him only for it to never quite reach him.
You gotta be quicker than that.
The point I'm getting at is all of these do share a commonality with Sisyphus in being an eternal punishment that is never ending, but none of which were given anywhere near the popularity of Sisyphus. So why is that? There's two things I point to, those being labor and perspective. With the perspective part, there's a lot of differing opinions on the punishment of Sisyphus. I guess I've been rambling for quite some time about the boring stuff, so let's make this next section more palatable for the gamer girls and boys.
Choose your character.
Either you pursue or push. Oh Sisyphus, the stone destined to keep rolling. Life is a Sisyphean race. Run even faster toward the finish line. That is merely the start of the next race.
That is a nice boulder.
Few tasks are more like torture of Sisyphus than housework. With its endless repetition, the clean becomes soiled, the soiled is made clean, over and over, day after day.
The only difference is that we are mere mortals, and one day we will die. Death excuses us from our daily toils, unlike Sisyphus, who has to toil till eternity. Oh, guys, I'm just getting really tired rolling this rock up this hill. If you tell your troubles to God, you put them into the grave. They will never rise again when you have committed them to Him. If you roll your burden anywhere else, it will roll back again like the stone of Sisyphus. It is the nature of desire not to be satisfied, and most men live only for the gratification of it. Well, nobody ever asked how the rock must feel being rolled up the hill over and over. I mean, we're asking the real questions here. Ha! The gods had condemned Sisyphus to ceaselessly rolling a rock to the top of a mountain, whence the stone would fall back down of its own weight. They had thought with some reason that there is no more dreadful punishment than futile and hopeless labor. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I know I just threw the kitchen sink of Sisyphean takes at you, but first I'll point to Camus with the last quote as it pertains to another portion that made Sisyphus so different, which is labor. Camus, a French philosopher, is the most well known to write on the subject with his myth of Sisyphus that imagines Sisyphus as happy, transforming the Greek myth into a story of absurdism, which is a little bit tricky of a term to distinct between, but here's a good chart I find useful on Wikipedia. But I know y'all hate reading, so let me explain. So let's look at doing the dishes. A monotheistic existentialist would view this chore as a good deed that will lead to a good afterlife for them in the future, whereas an atheistic existentialist would view doing the dishes as a good deed that provides meaning and value towards them, with no goal of the afterlife promised. Now, an absurdist would look at this task and say, yeah, you could probably find meaning and value in doing the dishes, but who cares about all that noise? The dishes need to be done, and still go on doing the dishes in the face of the absurd. And a nihilist, well...
Every night fucks every day up. Every day patches the night up. On God, you should match it, it's that KO. No white lighters till I...
This is just a micro crash course on this subject. If you want to know more, definitely don't just go off this video. I mean, what do I know? I was going to pronounce Camus as Camus. This leads me to the fixation of labor and absurdism as to why Sisyphus has become so popular of a discussion. There's no dispute with Ixion and Prometheus. When you accidentally cut yourself, you don't think of life's greater questions as to why you are bleeding. You're just in pain. And tantalizing is something similar, but very different. There's a gift being offered but never fulfilled despite how close you get. Sisyphus knows his efforts are futile, yet the rocks still must be rolled up the hill. A majority of people have probably experienced a Sisyphean occupation, whether it be work or chores. It's because of this very reason I wonder what Camus in current day would have to say about Amazon workers having to work monotonous jobs to barely get by. There's nothing tantalizing about this job unless you enjoy wearing adult diapers. It is this distinction that gained Sisyphus popularity to be influenced in films, games, TV. I mean, everybody loves Sisyphus. Deborah! You're not gonna believe this! A boulder came down the hill again! Okay, I actually didn't have a joke written, I just didn't want to pass up the opportunity to talk like Ray Romano. Anyway, the whole reason this came about is because of a game and a movie I was thinking about.
Game. Are we talking about it? Are we talking about game?
There's a lot of movies that are described as either derived or loosely based from a Sisyphean style. Of those that I found, a lot of them don't seem like Sisyphean stories. I mean, whomst am I with about as much philosophy as Bill and Ted?
Dust. Win. Dude.
To tell anyone what is or isn't something. These lists are great and will be linked below, but in my opinion, stuff like Life of Brian is more of a farce than a Sisyphean tale.
What's funny about Picus Dickus?
Which I know is semantics, but words have meaning for a reason. Farce is a goof of a time. If the intent is to make them laugh, then its intentions are very different than something more serious and taxing as something Sisyphean. The aforementioned Life of Brian, Groundhog Day, and 12 Monkeys are very much more of a farce than Sisyphean. Notice 2/3 of those are from director Terry Gilliam, who is notorious for his farcical work. And while some of these films do question existentialism, like say Synecdoche, New York, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Moon, I wouldn't necessarily call them a Sisyphean film, more so exploring what it means to exist. Now, existentialism, absurdism, and Sisyphean aren't necessarily all mutually exclusive to one another. They can overlap in some ways. The kicker here are two siblings who adore allegory, the Coen brothers, whose works like Big Lebowski, A Simple Man, and Inside Llewyn Davis often popped up on these lists, which I had a little bit of difficulty disputing. This is because absurdism is very similar to Sisyphean, and while the Coens use some farce elements for comedy, there is always an underlying and upfront theme of deeper questions like purpose, worth, the meaning of existing that offer an interesting perspective on these topics. However, the definition I gave has two important elements, perspective and labor. They check the first box, but there is never anything that strikes me as laborious or taxing from the acts of the Coen brothers, which leads me to... Everybody Wants Some is a film by Richard Linklater that is regarded as the spiritual successor to his classic high school hang film, Dazed and Confused. Now, of course, there's plenty of people who have drawn inspiration from Sisyphus or the works that came from philosophizing on his story, but none have been so blatantly upfront as to literally quote Camus in their film.
I just took Sisyphus and baseball, just kinda...
You wrote about that for your How did you even, those two things together?
Yeah, I did, believe it or not. I mean, the point of the whole thing is that the gods intend for Sisyphus to suffer, right?
Right.
Well, my point was that they've actually blessed him with something to focus on. You know, something that he could potentially find meaning in. And it's a gift to be striving at all, you know, even if it looks futile to others.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous to roll a boulder up a mountain over and over and over again, but so is everything else in life.
This was the first time I had seen any form of perspective on Sisyphus, and it blew my young college mind on thinking about things.
Am I the only one who understands the complexities of this ambitious cinematic masterpiece?
But they actually bless him with something to focus on? What? Comparing Sisyphus to the mundane of practicing and playing baseball over and over.
Digital magic.
And it was through this that was the first inkling of embracing that which is absurd was planted in my head, and completely recontextualizing what the point of the movie was. It goes from stoner comedy sequel to something that is more profound and asking bigger questions. Now I question every mundane activity, whether it be busy work making a bed or the aforementioned doing of the dishes. To bring up this idea of knowing something was ridiculous, but willingly choosing to continue to do so, and possibly enjoying doing so in the process? Absurd! How could anybody ever rationalize doing something?
Play the game. Play the game. Play the game.
Not to disparage the thought of gaming, there are a lot of great things that can come from gaming, whether it be hand-eye coordination, working as a team to complete a common goal, or helping critical thinking skills. I acknowledge these exist, but a majority of the time, I'm not gaming like this. Take for example online multiplayer games, Rocket League, Smash, and Splatoon. I am constantly yo-yoing around the same rank, so I'm not necessarily getting better, but still I return to them because there's something comforting about this perpetual cycle. Now this, admittedly, isn't the best example. What is, however, is a roguelike, or maybe rogue-like? Couch, care to explain?
A roguelike has progress completely reset after a run, making your first one and the last one identical in difficulty besides experience of the player, whereas a roguelite has some form of progression sustained throughout your playthroughs, whether skill trees, new weapons, or different items.
Which everybody knows where this is going.
Hey!
Mana Spark, baby! The 8-bit roguelike that's all the talk of the gaming community. Every time I play this game, I wouldn't necessarily improve, even sometimes playing worse than usual. I had maxed out all my power-ups, so essentially it morphed into a roguelike, with only the goal of beating the final boss left. But it got to the point where I didn't even care if I did or didn't beat the final boss. The journey, while repetitive, was still fulfilling every time, and I made this video knowing I would never complete the game.
Congratulations, you won. Congratulations, you won.
Fine, I'll talk about Hades. Couch, your time to shine.
Hades is a roguelike from Supergiant Games that puts you in the shoes, or sandals, of Zagreus, the protagonist, as he tries to make his way through the underworld, with each failure bringing him right to the House of Hades.
Thanks, Couch, that was a great explanation.
I'm not finished yet, hold on. You are aided by the help of the Greek gods, who in this game are so hot, they're so sexy, they're gonna have you going humana, humana, humana.
Couch, I don't see how this is relevant.
Okay, so there's everyone's favorite Dilf Poseidon, the mouth-watering beauty of Aphrodite, party boy Dionysus, but personally, if I had to choose just one, I would definitely go with that.
So yes, Hades, a roguelike that has a perpetual gameplay loop and actual Sisyphus in its game. It's the perfect example of the exact Sisyphean style of still going up the hill in the face of an absurd quest, right? Like, that's the whole point of why we're here. Well, this is what I thought, but honestly, for all the reasons I love this game, make it not Sisyphean. If it was just a Sisyphean game, I think I would very much still love the experience. But the elements of the advancement and story and choice are so rewarding. Nothing feels futile, even in the face of futility. Instead of the despair, there's always well-written characters that are cheering you on your journey. I'm getting stronger because Nyx had my back, because Achilles and Skelly taught me how to properly fight. And I mean, they even got goddamn Sisyphus of all people helping you out. Every time I play, there's so much variety that even if you were to plateau, which I haven't once yet, there's so much choice that you can find difficulty in going back through it all. And even when you succeed, you have a fraction of a chance of getting the same skill tree. Hades is like if Sisyphus had a choice of outfit and which friends he could choose to invite to watch him work and which mountains he could roll the stone up. That's life. They just aren't the same. So at the end of this video, I'm left with no answers but even more questions. So as the rock of uncertainty topples back down to the bottom, thus I go to see you on the next video.
But I didn't even get to mention my Zagreus Thanatos slash fic, come on!
Later, haters. Sisyphean, Jesus Christ. For someone with a lisp, with the letter S, Sisyphean is my nightmare.
All the single Hades. I